bathing in the warmth of your aura. Anytime you're ready, Denise, you're the chair. You're the.
Okay, I'd like to call the February 4th, 2021 meeting to order. Will the Parks and Recreation Director call the roll?
Bodla.
Present.
Ugarte. Delker.
Present.
Villa. Dutile.
Present. All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second? Okay. Are there any objections to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, the agenda is approved. Moving on to approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the August 6th and November 5th, 2020 minutes?
I'll move to approve the August 6th and the November 5th, 2020 regular meeting minutes.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, are any objections to the minutes as they're written? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. This is a time where we have public comments and presentations. And it looks like there are none. So we're down to action items. So selection of board chair and vice chair. May I have a nomination for the position of chair? We're all jumping at the chance here. Well, I'd like to nominate Penny.
I'll accept.
Anybody second that motion?
I don't think it needs a second, does it? For the nomination?
No? Okay. Are there any objections to selecting Penny as chair? Hearing none. Penny Vodla is the 2021 Parks and Recreation Board Chair. May I have a nomination for the position of vice chair?
I'll recommend Jim Delker.
Are there any other nominations? Any objections to selecting Jim Delker as vice chair for 2021? Okay, hearing none, is Jim Delker is the 2021 Parks and Recreation Board vice chair. So we're on to item B. Recommending requests be sent to the Kenai Peninsula Borough to continue availability of and community access to the Sledding Hill green space and outdoor rink of Soldotna Elementary School area is repurposed to Central Emergency Services use. Do we,
Could you please repeat that? It cut off on the iPad.
okay, it's recommending a request be sent to the Kenai Peninsula Borough to continue availability of and community access to the Sledding Hill green space and outdoor rink of Soldotna Elementary School area is repurposed to Central Emergency Services area.
I'll go ahead and
Is there a motion, to recommend the request?
yes, I'll go ahead and make a motion to recommend requests be sent to the Kenai Peninsula Borough to continue availability of the community access to Sledding Hill, green space, and outdoor rink if Soldotna Elementary School area is repurposed to the central emergency use.
Okay, anybody second?
Second.
So now we
That
need a
will-
Yes.
report from Director Carmichael.
With all the stuff moving and shaking, for a while, CES was looking at possibly locating where
Andrew, could you speak up?
the dealership used to be at the corner of East Redoubt and Sterling, but I've also entertained and discussed the conversion of Soldotna Al and/or raising a Soldotna Al and conversion of that space for use as fire station. In light of that, because when we start dealing with emergency services and stuff like that, we were looking, actually Joel brought it to my attention and said, we need to make sure this stays, because this year we started maintaining the rink for the ice and with all the COVID stuff, but at least get on record with some of the, with this project that says, if you change purposes, can you please frag that off from that and make sure, so even if it requires the city's resources to maintain it and stuff, that it stays available to the community. So we have that Sledding Hill there, as well as the rink and the green space. That's the gist of it. We would formulate a letter from our department and likely from the council, request that the council follow that up and go from there, just to be on record as having interest in that area staying, so it doesn't get engulfed in a project before anybody knows there's any other interest.
Any public comments? Doesn't look like any.
No.
Can we open
Yep.
this up for discussion?
Yep.
I'm not sure who's there tonight, so it's
The
hard.
subjects are now open to discussion by the board. Are there any board member comments?
I'd like to make a comment, but I'd like other people to go first if there are any other comments.
Would this in any way impede our kids from being able to play, or like on the weekends to take our kids down to play at the Snow Hill?
The interest in forwarding that letter would be so that would be an effort to encourage the borough to continue that access, yes, so that if they move the services in there or change uses, that Sledding Hill doesn't go away, the rink doesn't go away, as well as the green space. Playground proximities and stuff might not be an option at that point, but that's exactly what this would do, Edward, is it urge the borough to continue that in perpetuity.
It would be nice if we could keep it that way, because I live a couple of blocks away from there, and I can walk with my kids and take them up there sledding, and I know on the weekends I'd see a lot of families up there. So that's something that would concern me, that we can keep something, for our kids to do.
That's the intent.
Thank you, sir.
If there's nobody else who has any questions, I have a comment.
Go ahead, Penny.
Yeah, this right now is just a feasibility report and it's a condition survey. And it really entails quite a bit of discussion by the school board and by the district for the repurposing of that school. It isn't at this point a done deal. It's just, we just received the report recently and we need to look carefully at how that all follows out, and there needs to be a lot of community input. And I don't know that there has been. This has been a study by the borough. And I think then there will probably be more discussion on this with the community due to the reconfiguration that's in line with SOPREP potentially and readout, and the integrity of the building and the amount of money it will cost to go forward. So I think it's good to have on record that if this, in the event, I think it needs to be worded carefully, in the event that this goes forward, these are the areas that the community, or at least, excuse me, that this group wants to be pulled aside so that we would have continued use of those, the rink and the hill and other areas for children, the green space. So I think we have to keep in mind that this is in the event that it goes forward and that reconfiguration is made so that we can also maintain the integrity of the instructional services that will be provided for our students who might be impacted by this decision. Thank you.
So in other words, we need to send this recommending request as an in the event Soldotna Elementary School is repurposed, right?
Yeah, it would be a letter
Yes.
that languages it just that.
Right.
know.
That would make sense.
Yeah, when Joel presented this, I thought back to the DOT projects where they always say, oh, too late to add the bike path. So that was why we brought it forward. It means that as soon as we heard of that study, it was a matter of getting on record of that interest so that we don't end up in a position where they say, oh, too late, we have other plans. Like they did that with the bike path up Funny River, and I believe they did it out on the Sterling north of town. So trying to, not that the borough would be the same as Alaska DOT, because I think even the governors are scared of DOT, but at least get on record.
So do we have to send this to a vote for the board?
Yeah, you
to
would
just-
vote to recommend.
Okay. So how many people do we have that would be voting for us to send this request to the Kenai Peninsula Borough in the event that Soldotna Elementary School area is repurposed to Central Emergency Services Unit, that there will still be community access to the Sledding Hill green space and outdoor rink?
And I'm not sure who's speaking.
Denise?
Oh, Denise, thank you, Denise. And I, to follow up on that, I think that it needs to have the word intent in there. And I also think that there are really some things to look at, looking at the future of the city, and looking at the fact that the residents need to be involved in this. We don't want to have to build a new school in the future. But we don't know if enrollment will go up or maintain what it is or go down. So I would be in favor of it if the wording was correctly stated, and I know it will be.
Anybody else agree with this? We bring this up to a vote then?
I second it.
Seconded by Eric.
To the roll call then?
Okay, roll call.
Okay. Make sure your mic's on.
So recommending request to KPB. Fadla? Fadla?
I didn't hear what we said. We're recommending what?
Recommending request to KPB. Vadla?
Yes, I think that's a good idea with the language that was stated, and if we could hear
In
that
the
at the
event.
end.
It would be in the event that Soldotna Elementary School area is repurposed to central emergency services, the borough would continue the availability of and community access to the sledding hill, the green space, and outdoor rink.
Yes,
Ugarte,
Yes, ma'am. I second
Delker,
it.
Yes.
Villa,
Yes.
Dutiel,
Yes. So hearing no objections, that's what we will send forward.
We will also provide a copy. It will probably need to come
Thank you.
through council. City manager will probably put any finishing touches on it, and then once it comes out of council, then we'll go from there. Next item we have is a portion of our capital list that we're bringing forth to be included on the city's capital plan, as well as a review of the overall city's CIP, capital improvement project list from Public Works Director Kyle Cornelis. So I'll whip through the Parks and Rec Department stuff first, and then hand it over to Kyle, because in terms of that stuff. So one thing I want to point out, and it says in the memo, but even on the record, is that, it's, when Joel and I go to conferences, we kind of cower down in the back of the classrooms and the sessions on capital improvements and everything else, because everybody, all the other communities have sometimes horrible tales of woe being able to get anything done. And we feel like the guilty, entitled ones over in the corner, because Soldotna just knocks stuff out of the park as a city. And it's been that way since I got here in 1993, that the quality of life aspect of community leadership coming down from the Soldotna councils and mayors has been such that those things were put on a paramount of importance. And as we looked back at our master plan, we've already knocked out a number of those things that are on it, and it just continues. So it's not that we we don't have great hopes and everything else. It's just we don't end up with a long list in the city of Soldotna, because it's funded, it's done, and then we move on, which is a really fortunate for the community, and definitely fortunate as the Parks Director and as the department. We have great support, and we're no different than all the other departments in the city as well. I remember years ago, the state did a bond issue for deferred maintenance, where all the communities were turning in their deferred maintenance. This is probably like 15 years ago. And the city of Soldotna just forwarded a letter, said, no, we're good. We don't have much. A few years later, the roof caved in on the water tower, but that was an anomaly. But for the most part, we're very fortunate. So with this list, even though it's brief, and we add things, and it's a dynamic list, but these are some of the things that are on the bucket list that we want to see if we can knock out, and see if the board is on the same page, as well as to also provide this as a tickler for you all to start thinking and maybe talk with people about some of the things that they want to see the community over the course of this summer. We hope to meet and have a work session to develop a forward plan overall with some of the ideas that come out of the community members and such like that to move forward. So these specific things this list is by no means finite. It does dovetail in with what Kyle will present as well in some areas. In other areas, there's some new stuff on here, big and small, so that's where we're looking to head right now. The first one on the list is West Redoubt. We have the city owns the property at the end of West Redoubt. It has in its lease, or in its actual deed, it is identified as a recreational property and is used as such. It's a smaller group of fishermen, but still very popular area that go in there and fish. It's a very beautiful terrain with topography that lends itself to a lot of different uses, from walking to mountain biking, single tracking, and possibly snowshoeing in the wintertime. We started grooming it this year, which has been very well received on a limited basis, or groomed it on a limited basis, but hope to expand, as well as enter into possibly some cooperative use agreements with the DNR on the adjacent properties for winter use. Beyond just the recreational aspect, though, there is a very significant cultural aspect to that property that is very interesting and needs to be kept high. So when we do develop it, it'll be phased so that the first portion would be the interpretive aspect of it, working with the groups. And we actually, within this year's budget, will be requesting an amount for conceptual design and stakeholder meetings to, if the board's groovy with it, to start reaching out to people and figure out what they'd like to see there and in terms of those things. So, but when we start looking in, I think, Joel, even at the limited basis, as far as the trail in there, the trail in there, you got a mile in there or 2 miles in there? There's a 2-mile loop in there with some of the equipment we bought with the CARES money to insert that, and it's already very well used. But what this project would do would be create a historical interpretive site that references the ancient culture of the village that was there. And the interesting portion about that is on this side of the river, they fished sockeyes and used the stink pot, or I guess stink pot, where they buried the fish and it's soured as far as their preserving methods. And then right across this river at Slycock, you see a progression of civilization where they elevated and figured out how to use the permafrost to be able to refrigerate their fish, but also that meant they were fishing silvers in the fall when the weather started to get cold and would stay better. So that from those two sites, it's pretty crazy where you have the evolution of civilization and technology and the learning of man right there, two visible spots. So it would be of paramount importance to not only protect it, but also provide it as an information in whether the visitors use it or the local people use it in terms of that stuff. So that would be the first phase. Second phase would then be to enlighten and enhance the trails that lead into that and possibly form in a single track bicycle path down in there that would double as a walking path as well as a snowshoe path in the wintertime to expand the recreation. We would need to expand the parking that's there because the residents that are there are already impacted with the use that happens in July, the same as ours. Everybody's impacted, but certain locations like this and other places are a little more popular with people wandering around on their property and close to their house. And then towards the latter portion, the last phase would be elevate then the quality of the trail as well as possibly do some bank restoration, armoring, and or river access stairs in there. We have a popular fishery there. It's a cut bank. It's a drop-off bank, amazingly so, that it's still in good shape, but that's just a matter of time. So that portion of this project then would also foster that so that we could move forward and that bank wouldn't end up closed because of the detrimental use effects. So it's kind of a three-pronged approach to work at that. We're looking at a cost of probably $250,000 to $275,000 with the do it, depending upon whether it's contracted out and or done in-house. Usually projects like this, it's a combination between contracted out and in-house staff doing the work. That's what we did with the Centennial Loop and saved massive amounts of money doing it that way and coming up with some pretty good products. So that's what we're looking at there that's kind of our number one. The stepping down, did anybody have any questions about that? I'm sorry, before I ramble on.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to know the size of the lot.
I'd guess 30 acres. It's a
30 acres?
Yeah, it's a good size
Does that
chunk.
include some of isn't there university land down there, or is it state land, or is that, that's a big, huge area. So is this immediately, I've walked those trails down at the end of West Redoubt, or some of them, not all of them. Is it just within that trail system?
There is the social trails that have developed over with time that are there, and we would mimic those to some degree, except for the ones that go through the sensitive area. We would reroute some of that stuff and reconfigure that. The property that goes upstream is DNR and a trust from the Gervis estate years ago. And whereas there's also DNR property downstream, a small parcel that isn't necessarily in a trust or anything else, it's just a DNR property. So there's no university property on that side. The other side of the river there is, but on our side, it's just us and DNR.
Okay, so then the trust is still within the trust, so that we just have access to DNR downstream?
Hopefully we'll be able to gain winter access and possibly even summer trail access to lend in with the spirit of recreation in terms of that stuff, to be able to go upstream. And we're not really envisioning going downstream too much because it's such a finite portion. But if when we've done some conceptual trail work in there, it's possible to put a nice single track in there that could be up to 4 miles long if it wound through and had contours and such like that. If we incorporated the DNR property, there is a possibility to connect the trail, because there's already a trail that comes up and connects to Little Avenue. But that has to be a delicate approach, whether or not it's not necessarily a designated trailhead, but could connect, because we have residential impacts that we'd have to consider for that. But that's the
Right.
social trail now, kind of loops from West Reed out, and if you don't head back on the path, you end up popping up on Little, and then I think you also could pop up on the flower streets too, correct, Joel? So in terms of Amaryllis and those ones.
Okay, and then, thank you. And so I'm not sure, you probably answered my question, but some of it was in and out. So we wouldn't be able to use the trust land. It would just be the 30 acres and the DNR land.
We're hopeful we could use the trust land upstream, because it would fit within the
Upstream,
nature.
okay.
As long as
And then-
we've dealt with that before, as long as it were minimal impact and such, then we're able to, sometimes we can negotiate those memorandums of agreement. We have the state actually coming forth to do just that, to negotiate some trails across the DNR property by upstream from Soldotna Creek. So it is possible, it just takes some understanding and some mutual agreements.
Thank you. And I have two, may I ask another question? I don't want to keep anybody off.
Sure, go ahead, Penny.
Okay, so I wondered about the river access in the summer and what impact that would have on the communities down West Redoubt. And I also wondered about parking when I read this, because I love the concept. I think it's really amazing for the community. But I just wondered about river access, especially summer, and parking. I don't know if that'd be probably all year round, but maybe worse in the summer. So if you could answer those two questions, please.
Everywhere's worse in the summer, and this area does get annoyed with impromptu parking, and the city has posted no parking signs up along the road. Right now, there's room for about 3 or 4 cars, which then usually bleeds into 5 or 6. The fishery is an interesting one in that it gets hit from the banks as well as boat drop-offs, so it kind of gets hit from both sides. So within the plan would be an amount of parking that would be provided, likely fenced, or at least create some visual barriers between the parking and the private landowners, to coordinate with them what they can live with, and hope will attenuate the wandering in and using their people's groomed lawns and or bushes for bathrooms and those type of things. Not that that ever happens, but it does. And in terms of those things. So yeah, parking a lot is a finite thing. And when we speak of progression before even a parking lot could go in, would be the protection and development of the cultural site as a precursor to anything else, because we can't really invite any more people in there until we do due diligence work maintaining and protecting that.
Yeah, and that would be probably my final question about the cultural site, because that has really been protected over the years. So I think it's a really good idea. I think there is still probably some research that maybe, I don't know, has to be done. But I think we are a community where people get out and do things, and this is just one more thing that brings people to the community. But I think we need to take into consideration the sensitivity of the people who live down West Redoubt. So thank you for answering all my questions, Andrew.
Welcome. Any other questions? Seeing none. Next one, we've been holding and programming skating events at Arc Lake every Saturday from December through this weekend, where this weekend we finish up our programming out there with the first ever night skate and movie at Arc Lake. So we've got 3 rink areas cleared out there as well as the skating area. But what we're finding is when we're getting 300 people per Saturday for our free skating event, which is a nice attendance. It was all the way to the point where even a herd of caribou showed up for 2 weekends. And people were skating around the loop, and there were some caribou about 100 feet off the trail. So I'm not sure we can get more Alaskan than that when we're skating outside on a frozen lake and the caribou are wandering around, but we're going to see if they'll show up to the movie. I think there's a caribou in Frozen, right, Joel? So maybe they'll come to see their cousin. So, but nonetheless, we'll kick it off with there. But what we're finding is the popularity. Since we've worked with Kenai River Rotary, they helped us improve the parking, improve the beach area, and do some work there. And now all of a sudden, we're running into some parking issues. So what we're looking at doing is, we're proposing with this project is to expand the beach area where people hang out and chill on the beach in terms of that stuff, but also then clear up some other areas and expand some of the parking so that when we do program events, traditionally we haven't done much out there other than a few years ago, for a couple of years, Joel did a water safety day out there that was very well attended. But the area was built in the 80s with Land and Water Conservation Fund monies. At one point, it was actually deemed obsolete because of the vandalism and damage that had been experienced at the area. Since we've brought that back around, which actually started with something as simple as the maintenance crew many years ago clearing all the brush and opening it up to the road view. Since that time, we don't have much vandalism there, and we've had pretty good success without damage of people attending it on hot days. There's always people there fishing and swimming and having a ball and going from there. So it's growing in phases, but that little bit of work that we did, improving the parking and the beach, has paid back dividends and then some. So it's time for that area to possibly get some love, clear off a section of the trees as you face that, and you see as you're pulling in off to the right, clear off some of that area and topsoil and seed it, so we have an extra added picnic area. In terms of that, at this time we don't envision any more structures or anything, but possibly some benches and those type of things. So just basically a sprucing up of that area, converting some of it from natural, fairly unusable areas along the water to kind of like what you see when you go to Wasilla and you see the lake that's right along the road there, where they have the big grassy area at the one end and people are always there. Whether they're in the water or not, it's still a neat area to be. So that's what we're looking at there, is to spend some money and efforts to expand that and beautify that area. Are there any questions?
No, sir.
Next one would be we're taking a look at Riverview Park. Riverview Park is a tiny little pocket park that has a small little pod of playground equipment with a swing, a double swing there, and then after that it kind of heads into the trees back towards Kobuk. The area in there suffers the same kind of personality that's for underuse, that triggers underuse, that the Three Friends Dog Park had, as well as we experienced down over the hill at Solana Creek Park, where it's shaded, it's cold, it's kind of dank. If you go in there in the fall, the smell of dead leaves are not exactly welcoming. There are some tables back in there that a few people use, but not too many. But the thought is that now that we have the new kid park there, new playground, is to move back the brush behind the swings as well as between the park and the road, and plant that in and add some green space so that not only is it the playground area, but then it's a picnic area with no separation, to just kind of expand that a little bit and head back to the road. So we have another green space area that could be sunny in the afternoons and those type of things, and more welcoming. So that if two out of three kids are playing on the thing, mom or dad still has an area to lay out a blanket instead of just sitting at a table or something like that. So it's kind of redeveloping a portion of it a little bit to an area we think that'll be better used and enjoyed by more because it's more welcoming. It's not a huge ticket, but that's still a concept that once we start clearing those trees and taking some of that stuff down, that could, people could comment, and wanted to bring it forth before you all to see how we're going there. There's any-
Andrew, I had
Yes.
a question.
Yep.
In that green space, and actually I love the Arc Lake Improvement Project as well. It's very, very, it's really been positive. When you're talking about that green space, I know there are a couple of little, I think are there not fire pits back there, but places, there's a pathway that goes through it because I've walked through it. And are you talking about behind the swing sets and all that and to the, working your way towards Kobuk? Would you extend those paths too, or just put like brush, small brush in there, or what?
I would envision the first 75 to 100 feet to be green grass with not necessarily, we could continue the paths if we chose, but the focus would be on creating a more grass area, flat level grass, comfortable area to work, and then pushing the back. But yeah, it would be between Kobuk and the playground. But also then we'll also do some work around the play area because the trees and brush have kind of crowded it in, so it's a little more open in terms of that stuff, without losing the spirit.
I'm sorry.
I'm
And
sorry.
there are a couple of tables in there too, aren't there, to sit at?
Yes, but if we move forward there, we would envision continuing those, so we still have those rather than replace them with
Okay.
mobile stuff.
Thank you.
The next one is Farnsworth Park Fall Protection Replacement. We were working towards that last year, but then the 2020 kicked into full gear and all directions changed, so we never really we were busy dealing with COVID and those type of things, so that we never really headed into a full-fledged CIP or capital improvement project where we just basically didn't do that and needed. What we have is we have Riverview and Aspen that have rubber mulch as fall protection. When it comes to fall protection for playgrounds, you have some options. Engineered wood fiber, which is essentially wood chips, but they're designed in a manner and limited to certain size ratios to where they're still ADA accessible and such like that with assistance. The next step up is the rubber mulch. The wood mulch lasts 5 to 6 years before you have to replenish a significant portion of it. As you can imagine, the tires from which the rubber mulch is made last in perpetuity. So as in terms of longevity, this stuff is expensive to put in and it takes a lot, but we're looking at long-term shifting away from the wood chips that have to be purchased with regularity every 5 or 6 years and continue our conversion over to rubber mulch so that we don't, in 10 years, we don't have to have those expenses at the level that we would if it was wood. So the plan is to remove the existing functional wood fiber from Farnsworth, replace it with rubber mulching, and then stockpile the removed wood mulch for replenishment of fall protection at Soldotna Creek Park that still has the wood fibers from when the community playground was built. In order to replace all of that at Soldotna Creek Park would probably be over $100,000. And when you develop a playground and it came in right at that for Farnsworth, the total project cost was $89,000, and $29,000 of that was just for the fall protection. So in terms of that stuff, there are some poured-in surfaces that we can go that are optional that they use in Anchorage. We haven't quite bought on to that, just looking at the use patterns here, and as hard as it gets, it works in Anchorage, but we're sticking with the rubber mulch. But we would then have probably a 6 to 10 year stockpile of wood, engineered wood fiber, certified engineered wood fiber, that then we could continue to provide and enter into Soldotna Creek Park. So basically we're getting a 50-year fall protection in one area, and we're buying ourselves another up to 10 years of no supply cost to replenish those. They come in 1,000-pound bags, and they are expensive. The first 18 bags fit in a semi, and after that, if you order one more, that last bag could cost you $5,000. So it's not something that you can buy in small quantities because of the nature of the shipping. So we're looking to progress and shift over for Farnsworth and then create a big stockpile that'll keep us going for 10 years. We did something similar a few years ago with Freon at the Sports Center, knowing that R22 Freon is on its way out. It's not been made since 2010. And we stockpiled an amount of that should keep us going for another 10 to 12 years, hopefully, without a big leak, so that we don't, and then by then it will be time to consider converting over. And so what we're looking also is with the life cycle of Soldotna Creek Park is the nature of construction lends towards if we can stay off the need to purchase large quantities of wood fiber and use this stockpile, then we could continue to be able to have that serviceable until its end of life, and then at such time do a large project to rebuild that playground with the rubber mulch that then stays around in perpetuity almost. So that's what we're looking at there. I've talked with the suppliers and stuff. We had 42.5 in there last year. We bumped that up to 45 just because shipping and acquiring almost any materials is wonky nowadays. And so that's what we're looking at with that, is to progress and carry through and have enough wood fiber to carry us through the end of serviceable life on Soldotna Creek Park. Are there any questions?
No, sir.
So Andrew,
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm sorry I have so many questions
Okay.
tonight, but I love our parks. I see that the wood fiber will go from Farnsworth over to Soldotna Creek Park, and
In-
then that would have the replenishment of that, would maintain that Soldotna Creek Park for 10 years?
That's what we're
Yeah.
anticipating, yes.
Okay, and then, I mean, I know we don't have a magic ball, but would that mean that in 10 years, the rubber that we would want to put in Soldotna Creek Park could potentially cost a lot more?
Everything would, yeah, and in terms of
Yeah.
those things. This stuff is amazingly expensive, but the one caveat is that if you buy landscaping, almost the same stuff, rubber mulch at landscaping in bulk, even through Home Depot, it's more expensive than we pay for playground because of the quantities in which we purchase. So it's not cheap. The rubber product is about 20% more expensive than the wood, but lasts 10 times as long, if not more. So that's what the direction.
Okay.
And it is a bit of a
Okay.
risk, but it uses today's dollar, and because we don't have a final design on any change out of that particular park, the whole nature could change, and technologies could change with different requirements and everything else.
Okay, well, thank you. And when you mentioned on the, I don't know, where you talk about the equipment that will go to Soldotna Creek Park, equipment means the rubber right there. It doesn't mean replacing all the playground swings and everything. Equipment in that sentence means the rubber?
At the 10, we're hoping to get another 10 years out of the existing structures before they become older and requiring maintenance to the level that it becomes difficult to keep it safe. So we're kind of looking at the end of the life. The nature of that particular design build genre of park, community built parks, has a much shorter lifespan than, say, what went into Farnsworth or what went into Redoubt and what went into Riverview. So at that point, we'll probably be looking at about 18 years old for that park. I think it was completed in 2002 in that realm. So we're getting near, we anticipate getting near. There's nobody out there that says this type of park will last this long. Some features could last longer than that, others won't. But the nature of it is, they've had more of these burned down by vandals than they have. And then in terms of then replacing them, there's not really a clock or end of life. When we buy a vehicle, we anticipate that Public Works will get about 10 years out of them, and then Parks and Rec will milk another 6 or 8 out of them, and then they're dead. So we're not sure on the playground in this particular design. It's a little bit subjective.
Thank you for that clarification. I wasn't sure how long that equipment had been in Soldotna Creek Park, and I should have remembered that. I love the idea of the rubber mulch. Thank you.
And at this point, I'll hand it over to Kyle for the overall cities. And there's some features of ours in there that you may or may not know about, but after tonight, we'll know. We'll be informed.
Okay, thank you. Penny, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to present the city's 5-year capital improvement plan. Kind of got the round table here, so feel free to interrupt me at any time if you've got questions or if I can clarify anything at all. The 5-year CIP is a long-range planning document. We revisit it each year, bring it before council for adoption through a resolution. And it's really an attempt to balance the city's fiscal capabilities, infrastructure needs, manpower, resources. It's a map for getting a lot of feedback. Is this something I'm doing wrong? Okay, we'll just keep going. Let's see, where was I? It's kind of a roadmap for planned capital endeavors. It's a planning document. It's items that we identify and recognize as a need, and it helps us kind of smooth out the expenditures and efforts over the next 5 years. So, for example, we don't want to have 2 roofs failing or a big roof job and a transportation or road rehab project that coincide. So we want to be able to plan ahead for those type of projects, and also helps us kind of balance where our efforts are focused at. Part of the CIP development is getting feedback and working with all the boards and commissions and their different sectors and what they kind of oversee at the city. A public work session with the city council, and then ultimately, like I said, a resolution adopting the 5-year CIP. Real quick, I'll kind of give a brief overview of kind of capital expenditures at the city. Annually, the operating budget is put together, and that's where Andrew will talk about his operating budget each year for the Parks and Rec Department. Included in that operating budget, sometimes are small capital expenditures, things that can kind of fall into the operating budget, things like small pieces of equipment, contracted services for maybe minor trail maintenance or things of that nature. So there's routinely a small amount of capital expenditure within the operating budget that's adopted each year. And then separately, the city and other agencies produce a capital budget, which is a single piece of legislation that identifies a lump sum amount of money to accomplish a set list of particular projects. And that's an actual appropriation for projects that are going to have money assigned to them and accomplished ideally within the next year. Sometimes it takes more than a full year, definitely more than a fiscal year. So that capital budget is a list of projects with money assigned to them to be accomplished. That capital budget is developed in consulting these types of long-range plans. So your trails and rec master plan, this helps identify projects and needs in the city. We've got facilities master plans. We've got road and maintenance planning documents, and then we've got public outreach like we're doing today. So the 5-year capital plan, which I handed out tonight and was part of the packet that Andrew put together last year, is the link that has the blue cover to it, and it was kind of a shortened version of what we normally produce. The second link that Andrew provided in his memorandum was the year before, FY 2020 to 2024. And that link is in the memo as well, and it has a little bit more detailed sheets on each facility. This year, I guess last year in 2020, amidst the COVID pandemic, we did not, the city did not adopt a capital budget as we have done formally in the past with a large lump sum figure and then a bunch of projects identified. Instead, we did a couple of mid-year appropriations where we identified a couple projects specifically and had an ordinance for each one of those projects. So the two projects that we did are noted in the FY 2021 heading. There's actually three there, one of which was adopted through its own ordinance, which is the COVID-19 resiliency projects. And that's really the reason why we didn't have a big capital budget in FY 20 is that we had obviously some uncertainty over revenues, but we also recognized that we had the CARES Act grant funds available to the city to implement projects and measures that were necessary for the public health emergency. And so all the department heads and folks at the city identified needs. The city council adopted an ordinance approving the expenditure for those. They included things like pedestrian control at the facilities. Help me out, Andrew, some of the other things that...
Shower facility.
Yep, we had a shower facility that we purchased that has restrooms in it for sanitation purposes.
We purchased a pipe and drape inventory that would suffice to create 130 or 160 treatment room spaces on the ice at the sports center if so needed. And within a month or so of those coming in, we shipped some out for use with relation to COVID stuff and the vaccinations they're using them over there. So it came in handy pretty quick.
So there was a lot of little and medium and big projects incorporated into this grant funds. And to date, I believe we've spent between $800,000 and $900,000 over many different projects, which involves the procurement process, contracting, a lot of different steps. So recognizing that we were going to spend a lot of time and energy on CARES Act projects, in particular, we had this abbreviated capital budget in FY 21. The other two were mid-year appropriations. Like I said, it was the storefront improvement program, a small appropriation of $15,000, and then the Soldotna Regional Sports Complex major maintenance projects. That was an ordinance that appropriated $1.5 million to particularly target 6 different projects at the sports center, sports complex. They involve replacement of all the exterior doors, replacement of the popcorn acoustical ceiling above the mezzanine, refurbishment of the locker room showers, reworking the front offices and entry. 2 objectives there, one for customer service and improved public interaction, and then also improving the internal operations of the office. Also recognizing that that's headquarters for not just that facility, the sports complex and ice skating and racquetball, et cetera, but also for all of Parks and Rec. So if somebody wanted to reserve Soldotna Creek Park Pavilion or come talk about Arc Lake, it's not as intuitive, it's not as customer friendly as it is now. So that's another objective there. The other projects are some improvements, ADA accessibility improvements to the parking lot, and that's 6. Painting, whole fresh paint on everything, which is an endeavor on itself. So I'll pause there. I kind of jumped right into the first year of the 5-year CIP, and I guess if it works, I'll just kind of talk very briefly about each one of these projects and allow folks to ask any questions if they have them. The next year, Redoubt Ave and Smith Way rehabilitation. Let me grab a drink of water real quick. That's the microphone or my voice that's making it sound funny?
I thought you were just being emotional.
I get emotional about capital projects. That's true, Andrew. It's exciting. Redoubt Ave and Smith Way. This was a anticipated local match for a grant that we applied for through DOT. We scored really well on the grant, and we believe it is funded. But in the DOT way, the construction phase is quite a few years out, so we don't anticipate to see design and construction on that for a number of years. But we do recognize that there's a local match requirement, and so that's why we've identified that expenditure here. We have applied for a waiver for the local match, and we think that that's going to get approved. We got an indication that it was, but we don't have any agreements on that yet. So downtown parking improvements. This is really focusing on Soldotna Creek Park and the parking challenges that are associated with that facility. It could include new parking, on-street parking on nearby streets. We did implement that on Birch Street, and it's been successful. It could be street signage and wayfinding, things of that nature. The conference center. This is a companion project, and the next year you'll see construction. This $400,000 is targeted towards design. This is the design of the conference room, redesign and expansion of it. We have preliminary conceptual drawings that we produced last year. When we brought forth the major maintenance and remodel project that we're designing right now that I talked about, the painting of the walls, the exterior doors, et cetera, we did not include the conference room expansion just due to the magnitude of that project. It's, as you see down here in FY23, we've got $5 million kind of targeted. 4 or 5 million is really the number that we're looking at to achieve that project, which is a lot of money. And we have not yet identified, source funding or how the city would go about paying for that at this point. But we do recognize it as a need, which is why it's on the 5-year CIP. It's something that the city's talked about for a number of years and different aspects too, with different groups. If you recall, the chamber was considering a conference center at the Soldotna Creek Park as well. There's been numerous studies on the topic as well. So, jumping down to FY23, another phased project. This is Marydale Ave. This is something that I do get excited about, but nobody else really does. Pavement preservation. Not exactly a fun expenditure, but important and the type of project that you have to stay ahead of, kind of like roofs. We don't want to wait until we're forced to make the improvement. And this is a phased project. This is phase 1 of 2. This would be from the Spur Highway to Kobuk, phase 2, which I believe is in the FY24 column, would be from Kobuk down past Sohai. So one of the things we're trying to do with our streets projects is to implement provisions in our comprehensive plan and in our parks trails plan that enhance pedestrian facilities and non-motorized movement and accessibility in the city. So what we look at when we do street rehabs is the opportunity to improve on those pedestrian facilities. In this case, we were looking at 5 or 6 foot sidewalks. Karen Street Park upgrades. This is a project that was proposed by the Parks and Rec Department, I believe through the Parks and Rec Board, similar to the projects you heard Andrew testify about tonight. It was a project that was proposed and put on the list, and here it is. This would install a concrete slab, a soccer wall, BMX track, and some landscaping. Trail and pedestrian improvements, $250,000. This is a kind of a lump sum catch-all project that, again, identifies recreation and trails master plan and non-motorized trails and sidewalk infrastructure kind of citywide. So we would identify where in the city we needed to make some improvements and do the design and construction. And moving to FY24, I should note, as we progress through the years and get further out into the CIP, projects become less defined, I don't want to say less likely, but are programmed further out. So they have less detail, have less definition. And sometimes we have projects on here, as you'll see in FY25, that we recognize as a need, a desire, and something that we really want to accomplish. And having it on this list may assist with that, whether it's through grant opportunities or just recognition from our governing board that it's a priority of the community, but are wholly grant dependent. So, for example, in FY25, South Fireweed Avenue construction, that's a grant-dependent project. We recognize that, a new urban collector street connecting our city would be an excellent addition, but allocating $2.5 million for that is not at the top of our priority, but we do recognize it as a need, which is why it's on this list, but further out, right? 4 years out, 5 years out. We've got, in FY24, we've got paving of the Centennial Campground. That's, that'll improve the user experience and reduce operational costs. It's an incredible burden on our maintenance department to grade that daily, sometimes in the summer when it's rainy, and then obviously the user experience is pretty tough when it's full pothole city. So the second phase of Marydale is there, and then FY25 fireweed construction, and then a couple of buildings for the maintenance department. I won't get into detail on the utility fund unless anybody's as excited about utility projects as I am, but same thing as the general fund. We identify projects in each year. The two funds are very separate, and there's no cross-contamination, if you will. The utility fund is funded by users, so customers that use water and sewer pay into the fund, and that fund is used for infrastructure needs in the utility world. So those are also exciting. Discharge permit renewals, inflow and infiltration studies. It also includes subsurface work that's concurrent with street work. So a lot of times we'll try and make sure that we are not spending a bunch of money paving a street just to have to dig it up later for a faulty valve or aging pipes under the ground. So another benefit of putting together a CIP is to have those concurrent projects and take advantage of those kind of efficiencies. I'll take a quick pause there, and anybody has any questions on any particular projects?
Kyle, I have a question.
Okay, thank you, Penny.
You're welcome. You guys aren't going to invite me to the next meeting, I know, but
I believe you're the chair.
We have to, you're the chair.
I really like your whole capital 5-year plan. I had a question on the regional sports center, conference center. Are you thinking of expanding that same building and or adding an addition to it?
Good question. Thank you, Penny. The conceptual planning process thus far envisions expansion of the existing. We considered renovation and expansion. We considered, standalone. Ultimately, we decided that the most efficient process would be to demo the existing footprint, largely due to the columns that would be required, and then the ceiling height. For it to be a true conference center and to be usable for our community needs, it needs to have that high ceiling. So it would be the same footprint, but then extruded, I don't remember the distance, but a third again at least towards the parking lot. So it's the same footprint, but larger, expanding into the parking lot. And it would also include what Andrew likes to call a pre-function area on the south side that would create an entry that would be connected to the main sports center, but also to the conference, the expanded conference room.
Thank you very much. That sounds brilliant. I like the concept of expansion rather than trying to renovate something that's that old. So, thank you. And that was my only question.
And we do have some conceptual drawings that I'd be happy to provide to anyone. I can actually, I'll make sure that Andrew and Joel have copies of those, and you guys can reach out and get some copies of those preliminary drawings. That's what assisted us with the cost estimating to reach that $4 or $5 million mark.
Nice.
Okay, I won't take much more of your time. The only other thing I'll leave you with is that the process, this is kind of, the beginning of February, so this is the first board and commission that I've made this presentation to, concurrent with the operating budget calendar. We have kind of the CIP and capital budget calendar, and so department heads, whether they have a board and commission or not, will submit proposed projects over the next couple of months. All of those projects will be considered by the administration and weighed against their cost to benefit ratios. Do they have community support? There's cost of construction, a lot of different criteria, and then ultimately a draft kind of CIP will get distributed to all the department heads that would include some of the proposed projects, presumably, maybe some deletion of projects that are on the list. Ultimately, that revised 5-year CIP will get produced as a draft. The city council and the public, including yourselves, will have the opportunity then to discuss that and go over that proposed 5-year CIP, and then the public hearing would finally happen where it officially gets adopted. So that's kind of the end process, and I do appreciate Andrew's one of the department heads who put some thought and energy into his proposals, brings them before the board, has some cost estimating done and some well-defined scope, which is huge. And they're also, there's some restraint. I can't promise that all the projects that get proposed, make it onto the planning document. Some do, some don't. Some folks have huge projects, and sometimes there's, just the right amount. So we've had, we haven't had the pedestrian bridge across the Kenai River in the last few years, but I did like that project, but it was not happening, so.
Kyle,
Yes.
I love that project. I don't understand why we didn't do it 20 to 25 years ago. That a walking bridge would have made this community more navigable and just would have brought a lot of things together. So I'm with you on that one.
It's got it would connect, KPC. If you haven't been out to Alaska Christian College in a long time, I encourage you to check that out. It is an amazing place. They have made a significant amount of improvements. They are actively in construction, and I believe the building is on its way for a 17,000 square foot gymnasium that's getting built this summer out there. So anyway, it would make some amazing connections, and the land ownership is conducive to that as well, with the University of Alaska owning property down there, kind of this phase project that Andrew presented today, and I get to loop my utilities, so water gets to come across the bridge too. All right, thank you. And feel free to reach out to me too if you have any questions about capital budget or CIP planning, anything particular. Work through Andrew with parks concepts and parks projects, but always feel free to reach out to me. My information's on the website as well. So thank you.
So do we have any further discussion on any of these capital projects from the board members?
I have a question real quick, if it's okay. I'm curious about the project at the sports center, maybe this isn't, I should have asked sooner, but What's the capacity of the new, potential capacity of the new conference center?
I believe it would take it to about 350 or 4. The existing square footage is not horrible for the events we have in there. The problem is the ambiance, and with the short ceiling. If they could have given us a 20-foot ceiling in there, or a 17-foot ceiling, that'd be a whole different ballgame. It's kind of like that old traditional movie they watch you in film appreciation called Citizen Kane, where they always had the low ceiling above him, subliminally inferring that he couldn't rise above where he was, and ends up to be but a symbol of a rosebud on the sled. So that's actually the biggest thing. If it wasn't for that, we'd be looking at just expanding it out to the road and essentially using up the grass space and doing it that, and then provide some pre-function area. We've sat down dinner 276 people in there, but for fundraising and stuff like that, you can drop that down to 200 total max by the time you get the auction items and everything else, and then that's also where the pre-function area comes, which is essentially a glorified lobby, the technical term. But it gives a mingling spots, but also then fosters events. You know, if we're up to 300 in there, we could possibly then shift the safari, like an event like the Safari Club or the Soup Kitchen or soup fundraiser for the food bank, into that room instead of onto the ice, which would then cut costs for those type of events, but also private, and as well as improve the aesthetics and the coziness and the professionalism of it.
It'll propose to be about 6,600 square feet.
It's presently 4,280, so it'd be a 50%.
But yeah, 2,300 square feet more, so a third larger. And we do have pretty drawings that we paid handsomely for. So, thanks. And I will
Thank you.
probably excuse myself while Andrew talks about budget, so I can go shovel my mom's.
Any further discussion, questions? So I think now's the time to call for the vote, whether we recommend the approval of the capital project list for the Parks and Recreation Department.
Did we have a motion on that?
I move we approve the capital improvement projects. And I,
The capital projects list
yes, thank you.
for Parks and Recreation Department. I'll second that. Call for a vote.
So recommending capital project list for the Parks and Recreation Department. Vadla,
Yes,
Ugarte,
Yeah.
Delker,
Yes.
Villa,
Yes.
Dutiel.
Yes. So now we're at the part on our agenda for the Parks and Recreation Director, upcoming budget aspects review.
We can do it. Headed into COVID was right when all that blew up, was when we were headed into the budget process. Tourism was scary as far as a prediction. Everything was a little bit scary. Ultimately, Alaskans stayed home, and you couldn't rent an RV out of Anchorage because the Alaskans had them all tied up. In fact, some of the dealerships were requesting or soliciting to sell them your motorhome because they couldn't meet the needs that were coming. And Alaskans did fall out in full tilt. In fact, if we'd have had that type of turnout with Alaskans plus non-resident turnout at a normal level, it'd have been insane. Because as far as campground revenues go, we were 1% higher than last year. And though 2019 was down because of the fires in some ways, other ways it was up. It was down from prior years, though. We still maintained a flat curve from the 2019 camping season, which was pretty groovy in terms of those things. The spit was full, Seward was full, Alaskans got out. We saw it in our parking lot, we saw it in our parks, we saw it in our campgrounds, we saw it everywhere that they came out. So, but heading into that, we didn't know that was like, as somebody noted, crystal ball, the moose broke the crystal ball and ate the money tree. So, but moving forward, we didn't know. So our budget all the city budgets were very conservative last year. There were some pretty good hits taken in some areas, but as normal through Soldotna, the basic needs and everything else, we didn't, we were skinny and we're continue to be skinny, but we weren't strangled as some communities would have been and still are in terms of those things. So the budget, our philosophy going into the budget isn't to shoot for big increases other than to try to get some of the things back, travel and training, some of the materials and supplies. The staffing hours were good. We did blow the yearly budget in the parks, part-time labor. We're over $5,000 in that. That was not unexpected, but what we saw was a lot of other duties and a lot of other hours related to our department did the touch point sanitation for City Hall and the library and the bathrooms and the outhouses and the porta potties and everything we had in that realm, as well as providing the hand wash stations. And that added up. We essentially had 3 full-time workers that we added that we normally wouldn't have in a normal year, but then those were shifted between the regular part-times we had. But then we had a swing shift 7 days a week, as well as double shifts on the weekends with that augmented structure. So it wasn't anticipated, it was known, and lots of communications with the administration and again, being lucky because, sometimes you run into when you're dealing with government, can't, whereas the administration of Soldotna was, we got to do the right thing, let's get it done. We do have okay money. We're not broke, so let's do what we need to do to make sure we're safe, but also be able to continue to have people have options and out there, and that's that wasn't a trickle down. That was just everybody's approach to figure out a way to continue our services amidst the challenges. I believe the sales tax revenue and such came in a lot better than we had feared in terms of those things. So it's not that we'll have a big pot of money left over because we underspent and had high revenues, because we did spend a lot more, an amount more money, whether it was police and library, and the challenges in providing services were a little bit more expensive. So we're looking for a fairly flat curve going back to the budget we had for 2020, 19 and 20, and going back in those directions with some requests that we've realized. We've expanded some duties when we're talking. We've expanded COVID. If it could be appropriate to say, the silver lining for Parks and Recreation with relation to the COVID is, I think to some degree, Parks and Recreation's importance was elevated throughout the country with people needing different options that weren't the movie, they weren't restaurants, they weren't some of those things. They obviously also weren't the festivals, because those took a big hit. But people started to look for other avenues. For instance, Heidi at the hockey shop said, every day we've done the free family skate, is what we've called it, at Arc Lake. She's had at least one family and sometimes up to 3 families come in and buy skates for their whole family and then go back out and skate some more. A number of those had just come to the area, moved from elsewhere, and they're trying to figure out how to recreate in Alaska. I remember she mentioned one family was from Texas, and they didn't have any of that fun stuff to come. But so some of the impetus turned over, and it got people out and experiencing, which goes back to our master plan. And I remember talking when Nancy Casey, the consultant, and I met with Alan Boras back then. One of the most poignant things he said, and it was incorporated into the master plan, incorporated in our philosophy is all the way through the city, is that we're in Alaska. We have 9 months of winter. It's time we start to embrace winter instead of hunkering down and enduring. which his involvement with Salteshi Trails is definitely evident in terms of that, but that philosophy. So through the COVID stuff, we were actually able to fund some equipment and some expanded duties, which included a purchase of a snow machine, and we're working on building a groomer to do the trails. We expanded into West Redoubt. We didn't know it earlier, but we did expand the grooming trail, walking trails in Swiftwater. We purchased some light plants and have elevated our maintenance level and maintenance focus, partly through different change of personnel and knowledge, but also through goals to see if we can work through the overflow conditions that happen at Arc Lake and be able to maintain that through the end of February. But we purchased a couple of light plants, so now the lights come on at 4:35 as soon as it's dark, and then stay on till 10 o'clock there at night, so people can go out and enjoy that without being in the dark. Even on a foggy night, it stays light. So we've done that. We will have some scratching to do when it comes to, we're slated for the expansion of the Memorial Park, which will add an additional amount of turf to maintain. It's a little bit less the first year, but come next spring, that will be, or in the fall and next spring, we'll be experiencing some additional costs. So we'll cover those. But in traditional fashion, Kyle teases me that I don't like to spend money, but I do like to provide excellent services. So we're headed into the budget stuff very conservatively, as always. But I think Soldotna's conservative is still much better than anywhere else. I think we could plan Joel's work for other entities elsewhere, and we enjoy some capabilities there. So we wouldn't be sure. We're looking to get back to our 2020 or 2019-20 budgeted amounts, and then go from there. We don't have a lot of crazy ideas, I don't think, this year, but we are looking at getting into elevating our wood processing capabilities, which would be an attachment for the Bobcat, and then also a bundler. We do anywhere from $600 to $500 a year to $10,000 a year in firewood sales. And we ran into 2 years ago a federal regulation that reared its head that said you are forbidden from using minors for any facet of work within the logging industry, including the collection and or processing of firewood. So all of our 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds that we had been using over the years to bundle firewood, we never had them run the splitter or the saws, but just bundling, just picking up and doing that, we found out that was against federal law. Jessica learned that, and she went all the way to the federal labor folks and got the interpretation that we couldn't do that. So that changed our dynamics and our capacities to, frankly, have a full woodshed, and we don't. We estimate last summer alone, had we had an elevated capacity there, we would have been over the $10,000 mark, not only because it was Alaskans who burn more wood and have more fires than some of the other tourists or visitors, but also because it was a nice summer, you burn more, you sell more wood. So those appurtenances will be in about the $16,000 range, and then we have some other small equipment needs that we'll be doing to elevate our presence in the community, whether it's at Music in the Park or when we set up for an event at Arc Lake, or we set up someplace that'll have some small items, tent and customized things, so that we do have the presence. It's amazing all through the areas that, because of the way Kenai and Soldotna are situated, nobody really knows where they're at or in which city they are once they leave Soldotna. So, but to have Soldotna's name out there and presence and go forward. So I don't think, is there any other big items we've got, or marginal 10 plus items I forgot, Joel? So fairly conservative there. We did get a big piece of equipment that this summer or this fall that called a Ventrac tractor that has just changed the guy's life, even with just the broom attachment, that has allowed us to maintain Arc Lake sidewalks and everything else very effectively. And that's going to carry over to our capabilities in the summertime. So that's the only equipment purchase we just got done with, and then the addition for the Bobcats. Moving forward, away from does anybody have any, I guess at this point, I request, we turn in our operating budget on February 16th, first draft to the finance director, and Melanie works through it, with us, and we go from wants to dreams to, okay, this is reality, and back and forth, and it's very productive in those things. But if there's items that you see or think or see in another community in your travels, or people have mentioned to you that we need to step up our game, please let us know. And even that February 16th is when we turn in the document, the initial department request to the finance director, but that those amounts are malleable all the way till they get to council and work from there. So if there's some of those things that turn up, we get questioned, do we have enough people? Do we have enough equipment and everything else? And we're not bad. We're busy. There's no question we're busy. And we have an amazing bunch of people that work for us full-time year-round, and we get a lot done. And sometimes you sit back, and we just got done with our year in review memo to the city manager, and it's an exercise that everybody puts off till the end, but once you sit back, it actually is a way to look back at what you accomplished amidst this year amongst the COVID. And this year we accomplished the court. We had 13 sets of damaged stairs in Centennial that if we'd have contracted out would have hit our insurance for the tune of about $60,000 to $70,000. Instead, the crews fabricated, and all my hoarding and our hoarding paid off, and we fixed all 13 stairs for right at about $1,000 in material cost. So some of those creativities, and then obviously, I think Joel and I whipped out, 6 or 8 or 9 or 10 COVID mitigation plans and meetings and those type of things. And then in terms of that, because everybody didn't know what to do. But also some ingenuity came out of that with some of the stuff the crews built. And to make things where we went to cashless in the booths, and it worked out really well as some distancing and capabilities. And I think the biggest star goes to maybe Ken. He hunted out a supplier when nobody in the state could get those electrostatic sprayers that look like straight out of Ghostbusters. Somehow we got 5. We got 5 of those 2.5, 3 months before anybody. And frankly, we ordered them late. But that enabled us to, the library has one now, and we still use them in the sports center hourly, almost hourly, and as the bathroom. So had some pretty good successes within the capabilities. Moving forward, I'll kind of step away from that if nobody has any questions and kind of give you some updates. I will warn you, we have a mid-year appropriation project that's pending finalization before it goes to council. We have a grant out there for in the tune of about $269,000 for fuel mitigation, which is basically beetle kill removal through the city's properties. Challenge though is because that was awarded, and we got a notification that we would be receiving that money, but then COVID kicked in, and those type of things as far as funding and final processing got kicked to the bottom of the piles. We don't know when that money's going to be available. It's just out there. The federal regulators, folks we deal with there, John Zarneski's been working with them ongoing, and we just don't know when that money's going to be available. But the fact remains, though, is, for instance, I'll start out with the worst place location we have, which is the Three Ferns Dog Park in Aspen. I have a diagram I did up yesterday that kind of provides a likeness of the 266 dead or infected trees in that parcel alone, and that we need to get rid of. So we're working on a mid-year appropriation for that. The amount of the total appropriation would contract the removal of those, and then in-house crews would remove the ones at Parker Park, and then about 600 trees in Centennial. What we would do is hire a temporary small crew of cutters and laborers to affect that as frankly a Band-Aid. The area at Three Friends Dog Park and Aspen, I bring it up because if that project moves forward and we knock that out this spring, it's horrible. It's almost tear-jerking, and that park will almost be clear-cut. We have some equipment that will allow us to transplant 100 to 150, to maybe as many as 200 small birch trees from the airport that need to be going away, to bring them in there to replace some of those. But we're going to get hit here at City. Some of these big trees, you notice the big one out front is gone. You know, that was a beetle kill. So with the trees that will be going into here would be a larger caliper, similar to what we put into Soldotna Creek Park when we finished it. But when Aspen and Three Friends Dog Park, it's going to be awestruck when you see that. It's not pretty, and it's just solid, almost solid dead trees. Parker Park will get hit pretty good. There's about 60 in that small area. When the city affects its efforts, if the city can do that and affect its efforts, it will make a big dent. It'll definitely be obvious, but that will look even worse if the adjacent property owner gets rid of the beetle kills on theirs, because there's a lot in there where predominance of the trees are that that one could look. So we have some plans for keeping them looking nice and maybe changing the personalities, but we do have that project moving forward and want to let you folks know, because if we affect that before the next meeting, you will likely hear from people with concerns, with frustrations in terms of that stuff. We're working with the dog group, the community of the section of the community that uses the park and kind of caretakes it. They're aware of it. They've got some ideas, so we're working with them. But that's going to be pretty bad. So I want to give you a heads up on that particular project that's moving forward or in the works. It'll be a quick, knock it out quick once we get going, and then move forward. Beyond that, ice activities were slammed at the Sports Center since we're opened up. The council spent a lot of their lives dealing with the mitigation policies for the Sports Center to try to get it open, try to get it safe, try to get it workable, and everything else. And that document, the mitigation plan, is still dynamic, but we have something we're holding with at least through till towards the end of February to work in that direction. But nonetheless, we've even got 515 ice sold on next Monday morning, so we are very busy there. However, we've hosted a couple of SoHi games, and we have another one next weekend. So we're in full swing there. We've scheduled and started taking reservations to bring back. With the current mitigation plan, we can accommodate some hockey tournaments, as well as the river skate, Peninsula River Skate, that's attended by up to 130 skaters from around the state, depending upon the year, as well as at least one tournament we're working to get here, which would have about 14 teams that couldn't happen in Anchorage because of their restrictions. Some tournaments have gone to the Valley, and the one Hockey Club of Alaska, Jeremy Love, is working to get that one down here towards the end of March. So trying to bring some people in on a manageable basis with our 250 spectator capacity or limits, and still be able to keep these kids busy, as well as get some people in here to spend money during the winter season, which people often can think July, but without all these various activities such as hockey and cross-country skiing and these extracurricular activities, those are significant economic issues and benefits we have. Years ago, I spoke with Rick Busey, who used to be the manager at Fred Meyer's, and he planned that every time he saw a school bus pull in, it was $200 at the deli. One school bus. Didn't matter whether it was football, basketball, wrestling, band, choir, theater, it didn't matter. If a school bus pulled in, it was good for $200 worth of sales in the thing. So those are some of those aspects. And whether that money goes to Homer when our kids go down there, or Homer comes up here to the Valley, it's the same. So we are having a little bit of that, less of that with the inter-region only playing, intra-region playing in terms of those things. So I want to reiterate again, got night skate and movie skate. 5:30 is the movie time on Saturday. So if you're hanging out and got the kids, or just want to go see a spectacle of some sort, it ought to be pretty cool. We're looking at this as our first eminent. Joel and I have been talking about something like this for years on Arc Lake, to have that movie screen set up back in the wilderness backdrop of Alaska. We're excited about that. Hopefully this will be the precursor to then, or through this year, we're also learning more and more about maintaining the ice on that particular lake, so that we can hopefully do some kind of a pond hockey. Joel and I have dreams of a pond hockey tournament for kids, and then show Mighty Ducks movie in the evening or something like that.
That would be awesome right there.
So, and then eventually maybe do an adult one in terms of those things, weather permitting and stuff. So they can be tenuous, but this is the latest we've been able to maintain Arc Lake, even though it's a typical year. We're lucky to have one of our employees has had years of experience on the ice maintenance outdoor ice maintenance up in Anchorage. So that's been a help, as well as the bodies running around in terms of those things. So we're moving forward, trying to do what we can, and having fun doing it as best we can. The community's been very cooperative and very good to work with, whether or not there was people that disagreed with some of our mitigation plans and approaches, but ultimately the goal was to get some opportunity any way we could. And now they seem to, they're cooperating really well when they come in the building. There's the occasional person that doesn't have the mask on and those type of things. And I'll admit, I forget mine, but when it's 10 below, I kind of dig the mask and that stuff. So we're working forward, having pretty good results with the people and everything else. Like I said, we have a rock star crew to carry us through. So that's, I think I'm done. So. Any questions?
I have a question for
Yep.
you, Andrew. How did the campground reservation system work out this year?
With everything else, we just didn't. And a big factor of that was we had hoped to use our online registration program that we acquired for the rink and the pavilions and such. Then we realized that if you wanted to book a campground using that system, you would have, for 7 days, you would have had to do 7 separate reservations. So we're still in the market for that, and we should have that in place for this summer. But with everything else, we just weren't able to get to that. And it's funny, the world of software is, if Joel wasn't bald when he moved back to Soldotna, he would be now, because he and Madeline dealt with that. And it seems like every program we look at has this debilitating feature that just doesn't work. And then that's even before you factor in that we need an online registration that works and allows us to schedule for a hockey rink, which is a whole different ballgame, because you got a 15-minute time slot. A program geared for a hockey rink or an ice rink incorporates that. Others do not. And it's been, it was definitely Goldilocks and the Three Bears. This one's too big. This one's too hard. This one's too cold. And it was like that. And we got the best we could, but that was one thing that reared its head. And I was like, oh, man. But we do have have support of Stephanie, city manager, to work forward and identify that and get that up and going. And in terms of those things. And we just didn't know what kind of business we'd have. As it turned out, we had lots of Alaskans and we had fun. So in terms of those.
Just a comment. We were talking about stuff that we hear around our community. I have a daughter who's in high school, and I know all of her friends. And, I've just been asking them, what is it that we could do for you kids to try to, do something? Because either they drive around in their trucks and there's nothing to do. And they were asking, what if we were to open up the skate rings, like on Fridays and Saturdays, and just have like back in the old days when we had the roller rings, where you had music and kids just can go and hang out, and it was just something that teenagers have been telling me that it would be nice for them to be able to do, because they get to see their friends and they're in a safe environment, and we can look out for them to make sure that no drugs or no drinking or anything is going on. So me as a parent, that would be awesome to try to have something like that for our kids, because I would drop off my kids at the Brown Bears game, and when I would pick them up, I would ask them who won, and they'd be like, I don't know, because they would go to the Brown Bears games to hang out with their friends. There's not much to do here. So it's just something that teenagers have been talking to me about. If there's something that maybe I could say or do, or to the committee or to the board, to see if maybe we could get something going like that for teenagers, and it would, I think it would be something good for kids to come around and skate, have fun in a safe environment where all parents know that, they're being taken care of or watched over correctly,
Okay. We do have the public skate on Saturdays and Saturday afternoons, Sunday afternoons, and then Tuesday nights. Traditionally, we would be scheduling our Valentine's skate, and we would have had our movie skate or not movie skate, but Halloween skate in terms of that stuff. But it might be possible to fit something like that in with the diminishment of the high school schedule and the Bears not being back in town yet. So that could be something to look at. I can talk with Madeline tomorrow and see if that's possible to gear something like that towards a teen skate. We are having a lot of teens and families show up at the afternoon on the Arc Lake. That's been hugely received. When you start talking 300 people at an event,
Yes, sir.
if it was on the rink,
I've been there.
it would
I've
be
been there,
slammed.
and it's really kind of hard to try to find parking. That's why you have to get there early. You know what I
Yep.
mean? If you want a good spot, you have to be there early.
Yep. So, thanks. Any other thoughts?
Any other questions?
No, ma'am.
Oh, one more thing, I'm sorry. We are looking forward, we have a meeting, we had a meeting the other day, we're looking at, as of right now, the chamber is planning on moving forward with music in the park, whether it's in some kind of a modified capacity, and we'll be working with the chamber as well as the Nets, planning on doing the Wednesday market again. Probably similar mitigation plans as we did towards the end of the summer last year with those. Only possibly looking at, the council will be weigh in, will make the decision on the music. So they're talking about either Soldotna Creek, or if they ended up going private, to like someplace like RT Junction would be smaller and everything else. But their grant, the Levitt Foundation carried their grant over from 2020 to 2021, but they won't carry it over again from 2021 till 2022 because they were looking to move forward as well. So Chamber's looking forward to try to do that. We're looking at a lot of different options now that we've done one summer where we learned a lot from the Wednesday market as far as people, and then looking at some alterations in the music so that we can get those two integral yet separate yet symbiotic events that change the face of Soldotna to get back to some facsimile of normalcy in the evenings on Wednesdays anyway. And I would love to have Debbie Thompson from Thompson's Corner calling me about parking problems again because of music in the park. And then we worked with her and got those over with. But like to go back to experience some of those growing pains that we'd had. But, so that is a hopeful. If people, I ask, the chamber and the city are working to do everything we can to make that Wednesday a whole day event again. So, and now I'm done. I promise. Maybe.
Okay, well, as acting board chair, I really don't have a chair's report, so, and it looks like the city manager is not here tonight. Next would be public comments. Doesn't look like there's any public here. How about council comments from Member Ruffridge? Any comments?
Thank you. No real comments other than to say I think Parks and Rec has been really the shining star of the wintertime for my family. We've enjoyed a huge number of the events that have been planned, and just a great way to enjoy our area. I'm excited about some of the upcoming items on the capital improvement plan. That was great. And then from the council, obviously we spent a lot of time at the end of last year and the beginning of this year with the sports center and the plans and mitigation and things like that. So hopefully that was well received from the community to get that back open again. And if you guys have any comments on that, I'd be happy to hear from you on that. But that certainly did occupy quite a number of days and hours. So that's about it for me.
If I could interject real quick. Council and the mayor got beat up over the last few months with relation to parks and everything from music to the mitigation plans for the sports center, and they took the heat. They took a lot of heat and they handled it with professionalism and everything, and I'd like to thank them for their support. Sometimes, you hear these stories about councils, this and that, but this was one of those shining moments where we had a great support network, whether it was above us, all the way to the top, and all the way to the bottom. So I wanted to at least put that on the record that we recognize that you all got phone call after phone call after phone call, and I was pretty sure that Paul and I were going to get hung and burned in effigy in a few places at a few moments, but we didn't. The community came back together and we got them going. So thank you for that.
Actually, I believe that meeting lasted 5 hours, if I remember correctly. And about 148, no, I think it was over 400 emails, if I remember right.
I think you got the record as mayor since I've been here, since 1993, so.
I just have a couple of comments to add.
Okay.
I'd like to just thank everyone that's on the board for everything you do. Most people don't realize it or don't even think about it, but Parks and Rec Department is the face of the city. Everybody sees it, everybody participates in it, and it's a fantastic department, and they've done an absolutely fantastic job over this past year, which has been a pretty tough year for everyone. Hopefully, we'll start getting back to normal again and be able to do more of these outdoor activities. So I just want to thank you again for everything you do.
Thank you for your
Just one
comments,
comment,
Mayor.
just
ahead.
one more comment. I just wanted to say I am honored and I am blessed to be on the board with all of you. And I pray that Papa God helps me be productive with all of you so we could make our city look much more beautiful than it already is. I got here 11 years ago, and this city has just been getting more beautiful as the time goes by. So, like I said, I'm honored and I'm blessed to be working with all of you. Sincerely, from the deepest part of my heart, thank you.
Thank you. Now it's time for our board member comments. We'll start, I guess, with one of our new members, Annette Villa.
Well, I guess I would like to also say thank you for being appointed to this board. I'm very excited. I believe in Soldotna. I'm a small business owner, and I work in the park every summer for years. And I'm very passionate about it, and I'm very excited to also be here to help improve it. And I also want to say thank you to the city council and to the mayor for all your support for the Wednesday market last year. If this is an appropriate time to do that, but it was a challenging year, and I am very thankful that we were able to have the Wednesday market move forward. Anyway, I'm just excited to see what we get to accomplish. Thank you.
Penny, do you have any comments?
I'd like to welcome the two new board members, Annette and Eric. Sorry I'm not there tonight. My mother-in-law is 96, and I thought there might be people coming in who didn't have their masks on, and I don't want to go up to her house and put her in that predicament. So I wanted to really thank Andrew Carmichael and Joel Todd for recommending the open space retention in the event that Soldotna Elementary is relocated. Thank you, Mr. Todd, for putting that forward, AKA Joel. Mr. Cornelius, I know you're not there, but thank you for a very thorough capital improvement plan. I really like how you laid it out and explained it. And kudos to you, Joel, for the success at Arc Lake. And Andrew, thank you for the parks update. I didn't know, I mean, I live here, so I'm all around the community, but there were some things I didn't know that you shared with us, so I appreciate that. And I think the last person who talked, was that Paul?
Yes, it
Who
was.
mentioned pardon me?
Yes, it was.
Thank you for that about the Parks and Rec group. They really are fabulous, and the events that they did this year and everything that we do for our community shows how much we care about it. I'm really excited about potentially music in the park. I'm excited that the grant went through 2020. I hope that we can meet and have something there with the Wednesday market. And I really value being on this committee because I really think that the heart of our community is the people who are in it and the kids who are in it and the events that we have, and that we have so many outdoor things to do and so many wonderful people who support all that. So thank you to everybody.
Jim Delker?
I just want to welcome the new members to the board. It's great to see new faces. I was texting back and forth with Andrew when I was deciding whether to stay on. I've been on it a few years, and so part of that whole process. But it is great to be part of this, to see the people that have been in and out of the board, people that have started the Wednesday market, people that are doing those things, care about the community, and it really is neat to be a part of this. So I think part of the reason I was drawn back was seeing all of the things that are going on, and even being a member of the board for a number of years, the stuff that happens in the community that Andrew and his group do that I don't even realize, and I'm supposed to be on the board and in the know, and all of a sudden I hear like, well, we do that, and it's like, oh yeah, Andrew, they do that, and I'm like, when did we start that? And they come up with the ideas, and they materialize, and stuff just happens, and it enhances our community, and I appreciate being part of that.
And Eric, I know you spoke just a little bit ago, but do you have any other comments?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. I just want to thank the mayor for being here and his kind words. Thank you, Penny, for accepting the chair, and Jim for accepting the vice chair. And I think that's it. I think our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much for running a great meeting. And I'm not sure who nominated me, but you might be in trouble. No.
Thank you all. Have a blessed evening.